afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kristen Marie, and I serve as the HOA's Education Manager. As the association continues to fuel hotel owners with resources, we are pleased to welcome back Tarun Kapoor from Kapoor Hospitality Consultants. The single biggest resource is onboarding, a combination of orientation and training. While training is in fact a piece of that onboarding, true onboarding is the bigger scope of the 90 days process. In this session, Tarun will address why you do need both to create good employees. Before handing this over to Tarun, please note the following disclaimer. Q&A will be available at the end of the conclusion of this presentation for any of your questions. Please type them into the question section and take advantage of this opportunity to ask what is on your mind, and we will do our best to answer all questions as possible. Today's presentation will be available for viewing within 24 hours on our COVID-19 research page. We are excited to have you all here today, so with no further delay, I welcome Tarun to begin.
Thank you, Kristen. It's good to be back, and hello, everybody. So as Kristen mentioned, today we are going to be talking about orientation, training, and onboarding. And if you watch some of my previous topics in this series, we've so far talked about effective recruiting, where we've defined recruiting as providing a pool of qualified candidates. So not going out and searching for somebody when there's a vacancy, but creating a pool of qualified candidates. And then we've talked about selection, where selection is really picking the best from that pool of qualified candidates. And I think I want to underline and remind you, qualified is the word, qualified candidates. So if you select right, and we talked about interviewing as the most popular method of selection and how to interview in our last topic, we then suggest if you want to be the employer of choice, then really let's start giving all our employees, even line employees, a job offer letter, and which is relatively uncommon. We hire line employees, we tell them to show up to work, we don't give them a job offer. But if you're looking at this slide, which is the same slide I used last time, the hub, if you will, of these spokes is the job description. A clearly articulated job description that describes the job, describes the primary functions of the job, describes the specific tasks that the job involves, will allow you to recruit right, to select right, and then to offer the job offer. I believe the job offer letter should come with the job description so that the employee, the potential employee, A, sees the professionalism you have, and B, they can sign off on the job offer letter by saying they agree with the job description. So you now got the candidate. Now the question is, how do we onboard these people? And the term onboarding is used quite differently by different people. So today I'm going to describe it in a little more complete way. And in my opinion, onboarding includes orientation, which is introducing or orienting the new employee to your company, to your hotel, to your job, and then training your employee for the job, despite the fact that they may come with experience, doesn't mean that they know how to do it our way, your way, or this hotel's way. And then, of course, in future sessions, we're going to talk about employee engagement, employee appraisal, how to assess employees' performance, and incentives, etc. But they all sort of are connected to this common hub, the job description. Okay. So one of the things that I think has changed in the last 5 to 10 years is this whole employer of choice, this whole process of recruiting, selection, orientation, training, et cetera, has all gone from being a very manual, paper-driven process to now a technologically very easy to do process. If you remember when we talked about in the past, we've talked about the HRIS, or the Human Resource Information System. Every payroll system that's available today, I shouldn't say every, but most payroll systems that are available today all come with some kind of an HRIS. So before you pick your payroll systems, I would strongly urge you to look at how effective that HRIS is. And each module within that HRIS serves a different purpose. So in the past, in the last few sessions, we talked about recruiting and selection using the applicant tracking system. So what you're seeing there as ATS is the applicant tracking system. This is the system that, if you remember, allows you to post the job based on the job description. It allows the job to be then posted through search engines, whether they are engines like Indeed or Monster.com, etc., all these different search engines. And we talked about how we need to effectively pick the search engine for the position. Not every search engine is right for every position. So certain jobs may do better, certain line jobs may do better with certain search engines, as opposed to certain managerial jobs, they be better with more with different search engines. Indeed, for example, tends to be more effective for managerial positions, but engines like Monster.com or even Facebook all tend to be better with line employees. The candidates who see the posting can then apply for the job on the applicant tracking system. No paperwork, no applications. They apply online. The system, if it's good, will allow us to assess if the candidate who's applying for the job meets the minimum requirements for the job. And if they meet the minimum requirements for the job, then of course we can proceed with the selection process, which is screening the person, interviewing the person. And if you remember, even the interview questions we are suggesting be very specific to the skills, to the knowledge, and to the abilities that that job requires. And once the person has the fundamental skills, knowledge, and abilities, then we can look at the softer skills to see if this person has the right kind of personality for the job and for our company. So now we can make the job offer electronically through the applicant tracking system. You can also have features such as doing background checks, etc., if you want to utilize those services as part of the applicant tracking system. So that was what we had talked about to date. But now we are going to be talking about the LMS, which is the learning management system. And interestingly enough, Kristen and I were talking before we started about how AHOA is exploring finding a LMS, a learning management system, for all of its educational offerings. So pretty soon you're going to see a hopefully more sophisticated learning management system. So what is the learning management system? Well, it's an electronic system that allows us to make sure that the candidate is going through the learning that they need to go through. the training that they need to go through, and we can record the fact that the individual has gone through the orientation and training, and you from a human resource management standpoint can go online, can look at my file and see from the time I applied to today whether my file is complete and whether I have fulfilled all my training obligations. So let's stay with this and let's elaborate on this. So I think it's critical to have a human resource information system that has a pretty good, easy to use, but efficient learning management system. So when I look at onboarding, I look at every employee, every new employee has to be onboarded to my company, to my hotel. And I use that word onboarding in a much more elaborate way. It is the orientation, orienting the candidate to my hotel, to the parent company, and it is then training the person to do the job how we do the job in our hotel, in our company. So the LMS will either make this easy to do, easy to track, easy to monitor, or it'll make it difficult. So let's sort of delve into this for a moment. The orientation to me, if I can use a metaphor, is kind of like the honeymoon in a marriage. It's critical that you have a good honeymoon because a good honeymoon sets the stage for a long and happy marriage. So I think it's worth your while to invest some time and effort. You don't have to invest a lot of money on orienting the employee to your company. So think about it this way. I'm coming to work for your hotel. It may be a Hampton Inn, it may be a Holiday Inn, it may be in a loft. I'm coming to work for your hotel. It's just a hotel to me. You're not telling me who owns this hotel. You're not telling me the parent company that owns this franchise. You're not telling me anything about the parent company. Don't you think it's important that I need to know about the company I am working for, feel good about the company I'm working for? Don't you think the core values, the mission, the vision of the company should be articulated, should be told to me? To the brand. If this is a Hampton Inn, if this is a Holiday Inn Express, if this is a Courtyard, I need to know a little bit about the brand because I probably may not have worked at another Marriott property before or another Hilton property before. So I need to know a little bit about this brand, what makes this brand different from the other brands I may have worked at. And then my hotel. What is this hotel? How many rooms? How many departments? What's the layout of the hotel? What's the organizational structure of the hotel? Who's on the management of the hotel? And then my department. How many people work in my department? Am I going to get to meet the people that work in my department? Are you going to show me the facilities that we have in our department? So if you look at each one of these 4 bullets here, there needs to be a story needs to be told about the parent company, the franchise company. A story needs to be told about the brand. The story needs to be told about this hotel. When was it built? How was it built? How many rooms does it have? And the story needs to be told about the department that I'm going to be working in. Now, if you stop and think about this, and I'm going to actually flip back to the previous slide, all of this can be actually put into a PowerPoint a nice, well-presented PowerPoint where you're showing me possibly the pictures of the owners of the company or the corporate officers of the company. You're showing me probably a little bit of the history of the company, when the company was formed. And if this is presented in a professional manner, then I start thinking of my employer in a much more professional way. And if there's PowerPoint slides on the brand, many of which you can get from the brand, you don't really have to create, then I start to get impressed with what this flag or this brand is about. And likewise about the hotel. So if this is done in a PowerPoint, then in fact, I can go um, sit on a computer and I can actually have the PowerPoint presentation slide by slide. Now, I believe I'm going to jump to the second bullet before I go to the employee handbook. I believe that the general manager of the hotel has a very critical role to play in the orientation of a new hire. When was the last time you, as a general manager, actually spent the first half an hour or the first 45 minutes with the new hire? Never, right? Not good. How do you make me feel welcome if you, the GM, not making time for me? So I suggest, if you want to be the employer of choice, the first hour on the job should be between me, the new hire, and you, the GM. That first hour should be in your office. So don't make an appointment when I'm starting my work as a new hire. Keep that first hour open. When was the last time you brought a line employee into your office to welcome them? Showed them on your computer screen or on your TV screen, showed them a little PowerPoint on the company, who the owners are, the history of the company, the core values of the company, and actually convinced me that what is important to you, the mere fact that you're sharing those core values with me, sharing the history with me, demonstrates to me that this is of importance to you. This is of importance to this company, so I better embrace them. The employee handbook. You probably have one. If you don't, please get one. Um, for no other reason than liability reasons, even though I hate to do anything just for liability reasons, but you need an employee handbook that meets the labor law requirements of your state. That employee handbook also, more importantly, is designed to let the employee know what you, the employer, expect from the employee, from in terms of rules, regulations, expectations, performance expectations, etc. So all the policies and procedures that you have are actually put in this handbook. Now, I can't tell you how many clients of mine have handbooks, and I can't tell you how many of them have never spent 1 minute with the employee going through the handbook. Not to mention, if the handbook is in English, uh, the employee struggles with language. So what good is that handbook if the employee has never been walked through it, doesn't understand it? It's meaningless, right? So I suggest you take that handbook that you have, take the same PowerPoint that I talked about, or even possibly a video, but you are creating a PowerPoint policy by policy. It talks about from the orientation piece about your core values, the company, the history of the company, etc. All the way now it's talking about your uniform policy, your absenteeism policy, your sexual harassment policy, etc., etc. And PowerPoint by PowerPoint, slide by slide, you are taking one policy at a time, and either in English or Spanish, you are making me go through the handbook. If I go through this handbook, through these PowerPoint, then by the time I have finished, you can actually then make sure that I am now ready to sign my new hire paperwork. All the waivers that you want me to sign, the new hire packet that you want me to sign, all that should be done after I have walked through the PowerPoint. So I see good companies taking as much as 3 hours to go through this first phase of meeting with the GM, and then going through the handbook, through a PowerPoint presentation, and signing the waivers and the releases. One other suggestion with these LMSs, this is very easy to do, to load this PowerPoint on the system. The employee can, after the GM has spent the first hour with the employee can then continue watching the PowerPoint on their own. And after each section in the PowerPoint, we can ask some simple questions as a way of saying, did you understand the past 10 slides? And if you understood the past 10 slides, you can now proceed to the next 10 slides. Sort of like if you were doing a DMV test. It's very simple, it's self-done, it doesn't require supervision and monitoring, but the setup is done. It's loaded on LMS, and the LMS hopefully is easier to use. So the next piece is deciding training. What training is necessary for this new hire? Now, everything starts from the job description, right? So the job description should dictate what training is required for this position. Now, in my opinion, you need to separate the training in two different sort of folders. If you're a branded hotel, then your brand requires you to do certain training. They all have the modules. You have to go online, you have to go through the modules, and they give you a certain period of time for the employee to complete the training. Your obligation to make sure you're meeting the brand standards is that each new hire has gone through that brand training, whether that has to be accomplished in 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. I believe wherever possible, I'd like all the training to be done for a new hire before I put them on the schedule alone. They need to be equipped to do the job. So it's my responsibility to make sure they're trained to do the job. So I make the time, I pay them for the time to do the training. The other piece of this training is our training. What is our job requirement? So for every one of your positions, you probably have checklists, you probably have standard operating procedures, and those checklists and those SOPs have to be taught to this candidate. Again, this can be done by loading it on the LMS. It can be done by self-study. It can be followed up with a test at the end of the self-study to make sure that this employee learned our policies, learned our procedures, and has answered the questions, demonstrating that they know it. So this onboarding of orientation, this onboarding of training, and mixed with testing, utilizing technology and LMS makes it doable, makes it consistent, because every employee has to do it. What is your requirement? A, set up the infrastructure in the LMS, very important, and B, mandate that your employee cannot be put on the schedule to work independently without having completed that orientation and training. So I suggest to all my clients that the corporate office, the HR office, make sure that the managers in the field aren't utilizing the warm body syndrome by hiring somebody and putting them to work right away, but are actually equipping this person to do their job. So with that, uh, I've brought in a lot of things, Kristen, talking about onboarding, orientation, and training, and maybe we can open it up for some questions or comments.
Yes, thank you, Tarun. We did have a question that came in, and it said, what is your thought about onboarding surveys, about how the onboarding experience is? I have been reading a lot about them. I've never implemented them into my onboarding, but do you feel like that would be a good idea?
Well, I think that's a beautiful question. You've probably heard me say before, feedback is the breakfast of champions. So if you really want to see the service that you're providing from your onboarding, from your orientation, from your training, and you really want to make sure that it is achieving what you want it to achieve, then yes, please survey your new hires to say, did we train you? Did we orient you the right way? And did you find that valuable? Absolutely.
All right, great. Our next question says, I don't implement this as a GM, but there are recommendations that I would like to give the owner of our hotels. And one was when I first started at another company, I shadowed all of the departments, and it actually made me a better worker. Why I'm a GM of a hotelier today. How do you feel with onboarding process about having employees shadow different departments of a hotel?
So I think in the question, there's a couple of different thoughts, and I think I'd like to break it down in a couple of different ways. One is I strongly recommend for general manager hires that they come to the corporate office, the owner's office, learn the owner's ways when it comes to accounting, when it comes to purchasing, when it comes to human resources, sales and marketing, revenue management. Whatever our company's ways are, our SOPs are, it is the employer's responsibility to teach that GM in the safety of the corporate office by the head of accounting teaching me accounting, the head of human resources teaching me human resources. If it's a small company and they don't have department heads, then the owner needs to make the time to be able to say, this is how we like to do it. But once I've done that, and if you have more than one hotel, I say to my client, send this new hire for a few days to shadow another general manager. Ideally, it's a general manager that's very good. It's a general manager that follows our SOPs. And so that I can shadow this person and see the implementation of your company's policies and procedures. So once I've done these two pieces, I then go to my hotel, and now all of a sudden I can hit the ground running because I know the company's ways and I know how those SOPs are designed to be implemented. If you don't do that to this new hire general manager, then you're going to hear what you've heard probably 100 times before. This is how I like to run a hotel. So the new GM is essentially dictating how they want to run a hotel. Now that's when it comes to the GM stage. But let's now go down to the line employee. I think it would be wonderful for every front desk guest service representative that's hired who gets to spend at least one day in housekeeping just to see what the back of the house looks like and what it takes to do housekeeping, to do maintenance, and why our customers expect what they expect. So just by experiencing housekeeping for a guest service representative, it's very empowering. Likewise, for a housekeeping room attendant to spend a day shadowing at the front desk to see what customers are complimenting us about and complaining about is very empowering for the housekeeper. Again, all of these things when it comes to onboarding and training are critical. The only downside, if I can even say that, is you're paying for the time. So if you're willing to pay for the time upfront, I would argue that the return of that investment would come in the form of a low turnover. Turnover is very expensive. Typically, turnover costs you about the first 2 weeks of somebody's payroll, if you look at it on an average. So,
Right. Great. Thank you, Tarun. That was wonderful. Our last question says, Tarun, can you give us some of your onboarding best practices?
Actually, everything I said to you is what I would call my best practice. I would create a PowerPoint storyline. PowerPoint, by the way, don't put too much detail on a PowerPoint because the detail is in the policy. So your handbook has the detail in the PowerPoint. Make it seductive, make it sexy, make it engage me so I get the point of that slide. So I don't want to read 10,000 words on your absenteeism policy. I just want a simple thought on absenteeism. And you can always say, if you need to read more detail, you can read it in the handbook. The handbook can be made available online in the learning management system. So anytime I have a question about something, I can go back and look at it. Think about it this way. If the handbook is in the system and my boss disciplines me for being late today or for being a no-show or whatever, I have the freedom to go online in the payroll system and look and see what the policy was on disciplining somebody for being tardy or disciplining somebody for being a no-show. And I can actually then see, was my manager following company policy? The beauty of this, the system allows me to post it, and the system then forces the manager to follow the system, and the system then empowers the employee to be able to make sure that the manager is following the system. So these are best practices in the form of your LMS, which you are probably already paying for through your payroll system. It's probably already there, but you are just not utilizing it. So my best practice, best of the best, if you will, use the thing that you're paying for. Use it to its fullest.
All right, great. So thank you again, Tarun and Kapoor Hospitality Consultants for this informative webinar for all of our members that joined us today. Please tune in Monday, April 19th at 3 p.m. for part 5 of the series. The employer choice is all about managing performance. Even stars need clearly articulated expectations. Feel free to visit ahoa.com for future webinars and also find our past webinars in our resource library. We hope you have a wonderful day, everyone, and join us for our next webinar. Again, Tarun, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye
Bye bye.
bye.